Hey, Zach,
Hey,
want me to pull anything up?
I think I got everything. I got the agenda, the minutes, the medical marijuana code, the CAO code, the postcard, public engagement, short plat, and then the two, well, my PowerPoint and Kevin's PowerPoint. Did I get it all?
Okay. Do you have control of the meeting or do I?
Looks like I do. Cal wants in. Is it okay if I let him in?
Oh yeah, go ahead. I actually prefer for you to control the
Okay.
meeting. I'm just,
Zoom the recording. Okay, we are recording. Sean doesn't have a camera tonight, but he's here.
Hello.
Hello, okay, so I'm gonna do a roll call. Commissioner Patel present, Commissioner Shanefield
Yeah, I'm present.
present, even Dixon's gonna be late, Commissioner Art Bud,
I'm here.
Commissioner Mark Collins
I'm here.
is there, okay. So,
and Eva is just coming in now.
okay. So we should just continue, she can join in, I guess.
So all members present.
All members are present today, that's great, including myself. All right, Pledge of Alliances. I pledge to the flag of, oh, you ready? Sorry. I pledge to the flag of the United States of America,
United States of America.
And to the republic for which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation, under God,
Under God, indivisible, with
liberty and justice
for all.
This one is a difficult one to get everybody to do the same frequency, right? All right, sorry. I'd like to get a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
I shall
I'll make a
move.
motion.
Got Art making the first, who made the second?
I'll second it.
Oh, Mark seconds it.
Great, thank you.
Also would like to get a motion for approval of the last meeting, July, I want a small screen, June 10, 2020 meeting.
Oh, I think we need to have a vote on approving the agenda first.
Oh, okay, sorry. I'm rushing now, right? All in favor for approval the agenda of August the 12th? Aye.
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 All in favor.
Thank you.
So, next item will be approval of the minutes. Need a motion.
I'll make the motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Any comments? If there's no comments, we should vote for approval. Aye.
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 All in favor. Next item, we have anybody for a public comment today?
If someone would like to give a public comment for an item not on the agenda, just use the chat function and we'll recognize you and unmute you. Oh, Mr. Chair, I don't see anyone who's requested to comment tonight.
Okay, if we don't have anybody, we would close that and move on to presentation for Hunter's Crossing, first additional preliminary plat. Zach wants to start on that.
Yeah, let me switch over to my PowerPoint real quick. Seeing the wrong screen, probably. Is that are you guys seeing the full screen on that?
Yes, I can see it.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, so Jerry Storhog is here, and I did mention that to Cal before I got into this. So Jerry, if you have comments on this, feel free just to shoot a message. But I'm just going to briefly go over Hunter's Crossing North, the first edition, the preliminary plat we received. So the presentation, it's going to provide a summary of the preliminary plat itself, but it is also going to provide an overview of the preliminary plat process for those of you who have not gone through the process already. So initially, this is the area that the plat is going to go in at. It borders Craig Road to the west, the Airway Heights municipal boundary to the north. It is currently zoned R1 single family residential, and the area is currently vacant. And if you guys have questions, feel free to shoot them. I'm going to kind of blow through this unless you guys need me to stop. So, and if I'm going too fast, let me know. So this is the preliminary plat for Hunter's Crossing. The proposed Arrowleaf townhomes are located to the south, adjacent to the proposed future school to the west, which is right in here. We got one more coming in. All right, Seb's joined us, okay. Highland Village to the east, and the proposed expansion, there's a proposed expansion of First Avenue to connect the subdivision to Craig Road. So Craig Road's going in here, and they're proposing to expand First Avenue to connect the subdivision there. So that's a little closer look at that. The preliminary plat is for 85 lots. All of these lots are single family homes. These lots will be going in on 23 acres of currently vacant land. The typical home size is 7,200 square feet with 60 feet of street frontage. Both of these meet our minimum standards for the R1 zoning. There's a proposed density of 3.84 units per acre. This is consistent with our purposes and intents for the R1 zone to implement the lower density range of the residential category of the comp plan, which is up to 5 units per acre. Traffic generation. As of now, 803 average daily trips, 65 AM peak hour trips, 85 PM peak hour trips. The environmental checklist has been reviewed by staff and seems to be in order. The notice of application in SEPA will actually be posted for this tomorrow. It'll be, the area will be posted, and we will be notifying agencies that we have an application. That comment period will be ending on the 27th. The process timeline for preliminary plats, it starts with staff determining the application is complete. At this point, we have done that. The application is then brought to the Planning Commission for review in an open record public hearing. That is not what we're doing right now. This is just a preliminary presentation to let you know what's coming down the road. Right now, we're looking at doing the open hearing, I believe, in October, just because we have to go through all the posting requirements and make sure that we're good to go on the SEPA. After that, the Planning Commission will make a recommendation to the City Council in the form of a resolution. The application will then be brought to the City Council and either be approved the conditions, modified, denied with prejudice, or remanded for future proceedings. There will be a 14-day appeal window, and then a final decision will be made. What you guys are required to do as the Planning Commission, you need to make sure that the development is consistent with the comp plan and meets the requirements and intents of the development code. The development makes adequate provisions for open space, drainageways, streets, and other public waste, transit stop, water supply. There's a lot of stuff you need to go through. I believe you guys have a copy of this. I don't want to read through it because it's kind of obviously wordy, but this is a lot of code. Essentially, your job is to make sure that it's good for the health, safety, and wellness of everybody, and that it follows the goals set out in the comp plan as well as the code. What you guys are doing is going to be an open hearing, and what the City Council is doing is going to be a closed hearing. So the difference between those two is PC shall conduct an open hearing on development proposals with the purpose of receiving testimony, evidence, considering its information, evaluating the proposal for consistencies with the city's developmental code. So this is not the hearing, like I said, but this is kind of a pre-hearing. But during the hearing, staff will give presentations. The applicant will be present and he can give testimony and comments if he'd like, rebuttal responses. So it's kind of a back and forth. Once it gets to the city council, they're going to be conducting a closed hearing. Once a decision has been made by you guys. So the closed record hearing, there is no testimony, and it's conducted with the intent of making a decision. So quick and easy, they're just making a final decision on it. So a lot of what's gonna happen in terms of going back and forth, asking questions is gonna happen with you guys, so.
Zach, is it possible to make like a checklist, a generic checklist?
Sure, yeah, I can get you.
I mean, it would be easier for us to go through the checklist, and that way we can be kind of all on the same page.
Yeah, I can definitely work up kind of a checklist that's kind of the things that you're responsible for to help you kind of study and get ready for that open or for that open hearing that's going to happen in October. So we can definitely do that.
All right, thank you.
So that is essentially, like I said, pretty brief, but that is what we're looking at for the preliminary plat for Hunters Crossing. Let me get you guys back.
Anybody have any comments or questions in reference to the Hunters Crossing?
Nope.
No.
No.
No. All right, let's then move to, I guess there's no public hearing tonight. We don't have any action items. So I guess we'll move into the workshop, and there's 3 workshops, I guess. The first one is critical areas ordinance draft by Zach. And then you have the short subdivision ordinance, and then you have the traffic impact fee option. So if you want to start, go ahead.
Yeah, so we talked about the critical area ordinance a couple months ago, and that we were going to start developing that and getting the draft going and trying to get that done as soon as possible. We had discussions about what a site-specific review process would look like versus completing and creating a new inventory. We talked about costs and stuff like that. So we have it's actually now a second draft of that available. It was sent out to you guys in the packet. If you have any questions on that, please let me know. I'm just going to briefly go over some of the additions we made, some of the tweaks we made, and then kind of the next steps. I don't have a PowerPoint for this one because it's a little more straightforward. So the second draft now, the CAO was updated and created with that focus of the site-specific review process. So we know we're going forward. We're not planning on developing a new critical areas inventory for Airway Heights. Frequently flooded areas and geologically hazardous areas have been added to our list of critical areas. This is something we talked to the Department of Ecology about. As of right now, according to all of their mapping, we don't have any of those present within the municipal boundaries of Airway Heights, but they have requested that we include them within our list anyway. So those have been added to that. We've added exemptions. One exception we've added is the development of a single family and duplex lot legally created prior to the effective date of the ordinance codified in this chapter, on or before September 1st, 2020, consistent with the reasonable use provisions of these regulations, or single family and duplex lots vested under state law. The second exemption we have added is other minor developments pursuant to this title. The exceptions are designed to, we want to make sure we're controlling where the environmental review is done, especially in terms of single family and residential lots. If we can do environmental review on like a preliminary plat and make sure we're good to go environmentally on that, then there's no reason to do CAO review on every single lot on that plat, if that makes sense. We can get it done at a higher level to not do it at a lower level. We removed references to the city's critical maps and inventories throughout. Since that inventory is no longer valid, there's no reason to keep referencing it. Updated definitions of the wetland rating categories and injection well classifications. Had some conversations with Department of Ecology on this, specifically looking at different types of injection wells. The classifications for injection wells have shifted in terms of how they're defined pretty significantly between now and when that last draft was done. So we had to make sure that all of our our codes were up to date. We created and defined minor development, which includes minor new construction or administrative actions that is an accessory to a primary use of single-family duplex housing, such as accessory structures, temporary use or special use permits, boundary line adjustments, and other permits or licenses that do not need to increase the footprint of the existing building. So again, we just wanted to identify a specific applications that don't necessarily directly relate to critical areas. So if we're not increasing a building footprint, we don't need to take the time to do a review on that. Other minor adjustments include additional state and federal mapping resources language. So since we are not referencing our inventory as much, I wanted to make sure we have as much resources built into this as possible. So we went and looked at some other state and federal mapping resources and had them cited. So if people are interested, they are also available to grab those. And that's kind of it. The CEO draft is going to be going out to agencies either tomorrow, Friday, or Monday. We'll see how it goes. But the goal there is it's not for SEPA yet. It's for a preliminary comment period. So when we send it out for SEPA, we know we're going to get comments back. But if we can send it out and get pre-comments before we get comments, then I can fix stuff before it goes out for the full SEPA. So the goal here is to get some initial thoughts to make sure there isn't kind of like a ticking bomb that I missed when developing this, so we can go ahead and get that fixed before it officially goes out for a SEPA review. So you guys have any questions?
Oh.
Sorry, I was a mouthful there. So okay, and with that, I'm good to go. So I'm gonna let Cal take back over, and you guys won't hear from me for the rest of the night.
Yeah, thank you very much. Next workshop is short subdivision.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. We are, as part of a grant we received from the Washington State Department of Commerce, are looking at increasing the number of lots that can be created through an administrative subdivision process. So right now, we limit the number of new lots that can be created through subdivision, called a short plat, to only 4 lots. And it's been that way for a significant period of time. However, the state, in order to increase potential for new housing, because we've been in a situation, as you know, statewide and locally, of the need for more housing, the state increased that up to a maximum of 9 lots that could be created through this administrative process. So why would we look at this through a grant from the State Department of Commerce? Well, the grant itself has a goal of increasing the opportunity of new housing, which is important to us because we're growing as a community. It also is an opportunity that we could allow for new lots to be created a bit quicker. So in reference to the Hunters Crossing preliminary plat that Zach just went through, he's outlined basically a recommendation by the Plan Commission. It's a advisory open record hearing, a closed record hearing for the City Council. There will be 2 different sets of notices that will be performed for that process. And it does take time to go through what that is, which is called a long subdivision. The process certainly can take up to 120 days, which is what the state allows for processing a long subdivision. The advantages of allowing more lots in an administrative process is that there is only the notice of application, so half the notice requirements, as well as it's an administrative process. It's done in-house. There are criteria that already exist in the code that are based on state criteria of when we can consider creating new lots with adequate provisions for roadways, water, sewer, etc. for development. So the draft that's before you is a very simple opportunity where we could more readily create new lots in Airway Heights that potentially could be used for residential development. And it was something that I think that we would be able to achieve relatively quickly through a process of bringing it to the Plan Commission, the City Council, with relatively immediate benefits to Airway Heights for purposes of getting more housing. And I would have the draft up if you had any specific questions about it, but the goal was to advise you about the draft and then see if you had any questions. And then if the Plan Commission felt comfortable, we would move this forward to public hearing with the Plan Commission on the proposed amendments to the ordinance.
Anybody have any comments, questions?
My assumption is that that would then increase per acre the amount of residences we could put there, right?
No, it would not. A subdivision is only the format of the survey that's required to divide the property. The zoning still applies to the property. So if the property is zoned single family residential, then a subdivision through a short plat would not be able to go lower than that existing minimum lot size or go above the maximum density of that zone. So no, it cannot modify any of the standards by itself. It simply is a quicker way to actually divide and create a lot that can be sold.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely, it's a good question.
Heather, how quickly can it get done right now, and how quickly will it get done if this gets codified?
So anybody that wanted to create 5 through 9 lots would need to do a long plat, and that could take up to 120 days. If a short plat, we would be able to really do that in about 45 to 60 days. So it can divide the time in less than half, essentially.
And also the cost involved in that would be also a factor too.
The cost to the applicant would be lower. Cal's correct, because the notice requirements are cut in half, which is a notice of application versus a notice of application and a notice of public hearing.
Nice, but it shouldn't change the cost to the city at all, correct?
This doesn't propose to change the costs. The fees, if Mark's asking a question about the fees for processing an application, those are adopted.
No, I was just assuming that it would, like Cal had said, it would lower the cost for the applicants, but I'm assuming the cost that the city would incur just from running this is already accounted for in the current process, correct? So it wouldn't cost us anything else?
It would not cost us any additional staff time and the cost related that to increase the number of lots. We would still be doing the review as a short plat, and the city's fee for a short plat is lower than for a long subdivision. But keep in mind that a long subdivision could be anywhere right now from 5 to 100 lots. So the intensity of review for a larger subdivision is more significant than, you know, a short plat with a few lots in it.
Okay. Thank you, Heather.
Absolutely.
Any more comments? I guess no more comments. We could probably move this to public hearing.
Yes, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Heather. Next is the traffic impact fee option, Kevin. Hi, Kevin. We always forget you, by the way.
Good to see you. And in a screen share, or maybe I'm not, because it says host disabled participant screen sharing. So, but it looks like you've got it, Zach.
Yeah, would you rather me give you control, or do you want, would you rather have me just go through it?
It's totally fine. You wanna be in total control. I can tell you're a control freak. That's what we'll do.
Okay, well then I'll keep it then.
Yeah, go ahead and enter the slideshow on this. Just to let everyone know what we're about tonight. So essentially what the purpose of this is to introduce the concept of a traffic impact fee to the Planning Commission and describe essentially why it could be beneficial to not just the city, but to the development community as well. just as a way of background, we essentially gave this presentation as an introduction to various members of the development community that we do work with all the time, to give them a flavor for what we're going to be presenting for you tonight. And then and got some feedback from them, which is great. I mean, ultimately, we want to have a public hearing on this issue when we feel we're ready. Maybe that's next month, whenever that is. And then those members can testify to you about their issues. We did invite some of those developers to come tonight and observe what we're doing and the presentation we're making to you. So I think there are a couple on the line that probably want to observe how we guide this and what it looks like. Should also say that Bill White, our traffic engineer, is on the video conference. He helped put this together. He's helped craft the approach that we're taking. He just recently completed, last year, completed a traffic impact fee for the city of Cheney. So he's got some experience in doing this. So with that, let's take the next slide. We're obligated to plan a 6-year TIP, transportation improvement program. And if you're looking at the roadway capacity projects within that TIP, we have $24 million essentially of projects that are contained in that 6-year TIP. There's various funding sources. Money can come from city general street budget programs and or the transportation benefit district fund that we have. There are state and federal funds that we can obtain. WashDOT has some discretionary monies, although those are very small. And then the other funding source would be private development through SEPA. And as you might suspect, we don't have $24 million sitting aside to do our TIP. So we're going to have to figure out how to deal with that. So we've got a couple of diagrams to show you. And this first one is the year 2024. And what we're looking at is everything that is in red are intersections and segments of roadway that will be failing by the year 2024. So as you can see, Hayford is kind of on the east edge there. It's mostly green, but there's some intersections there that are failing. Of course, the highway, when you get close to Hayford Road, you've got intersections and roadways that's failing, and a couple on the west end as well. If it's in yellow, that means it's not failing, but it's approaching that. If it's in green, that means it's starting to develop traffic. That's on our radar, but it's a still relatively free-flowing condition. So next slide. And then this is looking at the year 2040. And so now things that were failing in 2024 obviously are going to continue to fail unless we address them. And so you can see that those failed areas along Highway 2 are extending to the west. We have an area to the north on Hayford Road that is also failing as the roadway necks from a 5-lane section into a 2-lane section. And then the intersection there at Dino as well. So these are the things we're trying to stay ahead of. And so that's why we're considering this impact fee at this point. So next slide will show you. So this slide essentially looks at our 6-year TIP and puts the projects on the map. So you can see there along Highway 2, there's an intersection improvement along Craig. There's intersection improvement at Garfield. There's an intersection improvement at Hayford. There's safety improvements all along that segment. There's a segment along the 10th, 12th corridor, along with a traffic signal. We have an extension of the road along Russell going to the north to Dino. At 21st, that purple area, or that purple line segment there is road improvements and an intersection improvement. And then there's an intersection improvement down at McFarland and Hayford. So these are all programmed into our 6-year TIP. These are capacity related improvements. So we want to attempt to convey to you, what are the issues with the way we currently do things. And most of you know the SEPA process and what it's meant to do, and that it's meant to address all the impacts of a proposed development, and particularly transportation in this example. But the projects that it addresses aren't necessarily some of the projects that we're looking at here related to capacity issues, and they can be very fragmented and piecemeal in the way that they look to solve problems. Another problem is the delay. And what we mean by that is if you're a developer and you want to do your development, and you have to define what the traffic impacts are, you're going to hire a traffic engineer. You're going to have a scoping meeting with the city. We're going to tell you what intersections you're going to have to study. You're going to have to do the study. You're going to have to perform the study, submit it to the city. There could be issues of negotiation and working things out. The whole process can take many months, and that process needs to be concluded before you can really move forward. So there's delays in the current process that could be addressed with having an impact fee, or could be assisted at least having an impact fee. So the benefits, it supports system benefits. It is proportionate for all development. It advances street improvements holistically, and it's more efficient development process. And another thing to point out too is that, one of the failings of the SEPA approach is if you're dealing with a certain system that's been slowly creeping up in terms of how much delay there's been on it over time, and if you're the developer who comes in after development has already caused problems, and if you cause something to fail, then the entire cost of fixing that problem is on you because you've caused a failure. That's one of the issues with SEPA that makes it less equitable, if you will. Next slide. So what are the rules about traffic impact fees? It's been authorized by this RCW, and the administrative code citation is 365-196-850. And essentially what they say is that impact fees have to advance capacity for new growth. They have to have a demonstrated benefit to development and include a city development partnership, and they must be fair and proportionate to development. So those are musts. And then these are things that they can't be. They can't address existing capacity issues, generally speaking. And they can't be used to maintain or operate existing street functions, and they generally can't be for multimodal projects. They're generally addressing vehicular congestion and level of service. So the approach that we would typically take for this type of a project would be, we'd look at the concurrency period being the city PM peak hour. We'd address measurable trip gains per our planning documents. We would calculate the trips using the standard ITE trip generation manual. We would want to provide base fee rates and land use schedules. That's what most agencies would do. We would do this probably citywide, as opposed to a larger agency like Spokane that has multiple zones where they assess their fees based on projects particular to that zone. There is a wide discretion on the ask. With that said, is there a value to having a regional consistency? If our impact fee was quite a bit different than the adjacent agency, City of Spokane. You know, there could be issues with that. And then we'll talk about some of the different fee scenarios that we've calculated. And the other principle to keep in mind is we're trying to get match money for grants. We're not trying to get the full 24 million. We're only trying to get part of that so that we can leverage it for grant money. So I'm going to show you 6 different options. And very quickly, you'll get a sense of the ways that we can manipulate the way we're approaching it, and that will result in different fee levels. So what you're looking at right here is a $24 million set of improvements that we have programmed. And essentially, one approach, and this would be the highest fee level approach, would be to take the full $24 million, but we'd say we would look to get half of that from development. And that if we are looking to accomplish this, all of these improvements within 6 years, that it would be spread over the anticipated number of new PM peak hour trips within that 6-year period. And that's 2,300 PM peak hour trips. So that would be as big of an ask as we could possibly want to calculate. So next slide. So here's another way to approach it. We could take the full tip, the 24 million. We could instead say, all right, what if we are only able to get 25% development match? That would be $6 million, and still try and accomplish all of this within 6 years. That would be another way to approach it. And as you can see, if you do the math quickly in your head, that would end up with exactly half of the calculation that we did before. And we'll have a table here in just a couple of slides where we'll show you all of these compared with each other. Next slide. So another way to approach this is going back to the 50% development match of 12 million. What if we extended the period of time that we're using to make this calculation? So instead of a 6-year period, we're now looking at a 10-year period. There's more PM peak hour trips within that 10 years. So if you're dividing it by 38, 35, you would end up with a lower relative TIF fee because you're spreading it over a longer period of time. Next slide. Another option would be to start looking at doing not the entire tip, but a partial tip. So this would look at the first couple of years of the tip. So instead of 24, now you're looking at $13.5 million. And then you can also look at the other parameters, 50% versus the 25 and the 6-year period versus the 10-year period. And maybe I'll take a step back and kind of describe why we would entertain this and what the disadvantages are to this. We'd entertain it because it ends up being, it would result in a lower impact fee that may be more palatable to the development community. The disadvantage is by reducing the number of projects that we are looking to fund, there's more of a chance that if you're a developer and you come in the door and you're expecting to pay just a traffic impact fee and you don't want, and that's all you're going to have to do. Well, if your proposal has an impact beyond the projects that we're looking to fund, you're still on the hook for mitigating in those other areas that maybe are on our tip in years subsequently, but we aren't funding those with this fee. So you'd still have to go through the effort to identify your impacts on those particular corridors and intersections. So it's, on the one hand, it can result in a lower fee. On the other hand, there still may be project mitigation that needs to be taking place. So let's go to the next slide. This would be a similar idea of a partial tip, but now we would reduce the development match to 25%, and that would occur within the 6 years. Let's go to the next slide. And then this is the final option that we would consider. Again, sticking with the partial tip, we would increase it back to 50% of the development match, and then we would look to extend that over a 10-year period. So let's go to the next slide. So this is a comparison of each one of the ones that we just took a look at. And then in the first column there's the city of Spokane's base rate and land use schedules. And just to get a sense of how we would compare to them and how each option compares with each other. Probably the one that you'd want to look at first would be that line that says single family homes. City of Spokane for a single family home is roughly $1,259 per single family home. The very first option we looked at, again, if you recall, that's the full tip, that's 50% match, and that's a 6-year period. Now we're at $5,171 and change. So to give you a sense of what that looks like in comparison, that one probably is not a realistic one that we would be considering. But some of the other ones do look to be much closer to something that we could adopt. Again, the option 2 is reducing the development match portion to 50%. Option 3 is extending that period of time. And then the other options are looking at reduced, well, actually, could you go back? I want to make sure I understand. I want to make sure I go back to option 4. Yes, option 4 was the partial tip.
That's 3.
Yeah, there you go. Option 4 was the partial tip. It was the 50% match, and it was the 6-year period. So go ahead and head back to that comparison slide. Thanks. So I guess the main thing to think about as we go through this is, yes, there are advantages to each one. There are disadvantages to each one. And maybe if we want to get into the details of that, we can certainly talk about that. One of the things in the summary below the table that I think is something that we did speak with some developers that were less concerned with, they did want to make sure that whatever we did was documented and defendable. There have been other agencies that didn't have all their ducks in a row and were challenged, and it ended up being just a mess. So we would definitely do that. But this is a range of options we wanted to present for you tonight. And I guess at this point, maybe opening up to questions makes the most sense.
I would just add, Kevin, that as we're moving toward a potential hearing, we would hope to get a recommendation on a preferred alternative or a preferred couple of alternatives from a public process. It would be very difficult to have a hearing on 6 different options for impact fees. So I think it would be helpful to have a discussion about if there was a preferred alternative, because that would give direction to Kevin and to Bill White, our consultant for 2 engineering, about an actual document with a schedule and resolution that we could prepare to move forward with the process.
And that's extremely well said. I guess I inferred that without actually saying it. I'm glad you said that. We're looking to narrow down our options. We want to get your feedback, and we're certainly going to look towards our development community to give their feedback. But tonight is to discuss with you the benefits of doing this and the benefits of particular approaches. Go ahead.
I had a question. Sorry. So if you collect a fee and say you fall short of the fees because the number of developments or the matrix here did not calculate the $24 million, for example, or if you're over that budget, how do you handle that?
Well, I mean, you're looking to fund an entire program, and so you're only going to be able to fund the program as you are collecting impact fees. So there are some things that you do to your plan. You can defer certain projects that aren't getting successfully funded due to the grant funding scenarios that you're dealing with. So there's some flexibility that you can do in your plan, but essentially what you're looking to do is collect enough money so that you start applying for grants for those projects that are the highest priorities at the time. And this entire process gives you a way to collect those monies to be put towards those projects on your plan. Does that answer your question, Cal?
Yeah, it does. I was just, because the reason I ask you that is if you look at, for example, a motel room, option number 1 is almost $5,800. And if you go to option number 6, it's $980. So the delta between those two is pretty large.
Sure. No, it's a good point. And there is some discretion that we have in order to establish our methodology. Hey, Bill, I know you're on the video conference. Do you want to talk at all about why we would entertain a 10-year period versus a 6-year period? What's the benefits of that, and what's the and why would we consider that?
Yeah, thanks, Kevin, and actually great job on presenting the information. I'm suddenly feeling like I'm not needed as much with the way you covered that. So good job there. Honestly, the shortest and most direct answer is it's just a way to dilute the fee to be a little bit more competitive. You have the discretion of an agency to take, and stepping back one step to the comment before, as soon as you collect fees, you have 10 years to spend the money on something, or they have to be given back to the developer with interest. And so the benefit of having a citywide impact area or 1 or 2 zones, limited zones, is you have enough projects in that area to make sure that you're always spending the money so it doesn't have to go back to the developer. So coming back to your question, is 6 years is the timeline for your tip, but 10 years is the timeline in which you might have to return those fees back potentially to the developer if they don't get spent. So from the technical perspective, it was just a way to extend the trip comparison and dilute it a little bit so they could be a little bit more regionally consistent with some of the other fees that like the city of Spokane and maybe Liberty Lake are putting together.
From your experience, based on the studies, which one would you say is a more medium? Because I don't think I don't have the knowledge to say, hey, I want to pick option 1, option 2, option 3, or 5. But to summarize it, what would you say the medium option would be that's more in par with all the other cities?
My recommendation is to put together an option, maybe an option 3 or an option 4 or 5, maybe an option 3 or an option 4, something that keeps us, option 3 or option 5, something that keeps you generally consistent with the area. I don't think you're necessarily going to lose development by being the most expensive city on the block, but I think that proportionately, if you become too expensive, it can at some point become a little bit of a deterrent. Developers understand that traffic mitigation and sewer mitigation and utility mitigation, they're all becoming a price of business in a community that's growing rapidly. So I think the task is being able to address capital facility costs but doing so in a way that is consistent and palatable for the area would be my recommendation.
Yeah, and I would say that option one is certainly way, way, way out of the question. Developers are going to look at that and say, man, that's too expensive. I'll build somewhere else. So I would think, just on a quick overview, 2, 3, or 4 seem to be more in keeping with Spokane. You know, there's ups and downs, but not a major up or down between, except for option 1. So I think somewhere in the middle.
If I could just add, Cal, a couple of items to answer your question. One reason to go from 6 to 10 years is that if you remember from the presentation that Bill gave and Kevin gave, is you're looking at supplementing the cost with grants. And grants are not available every single year. Sometimes they're only available for every 2 years. And these are large funds, and they're very competitive. And it is not unlikely that the first time that Airway Heights applies for a grant from the match in order to make the total project costs, we may not succeed. So longer periods of time for holding the funds make it more likely that we could be successful in a competitive grant process to get the 50% or the 70% match that's required for the project. So please keep that in mind.
Well, that makes sense.
And then on the other element of it is Bill has done a great job of proposing partial total project need versus total project need. And there, as Kevin indicated, you're making some recommendations on some choices that affect in the future. So as a plan commission, please consider how much need in our community are there for these projects, and the map showing those capacity building opportunities, Hayford Road, Highway 2, Craig Road, etc. And how much does our community need them, and how soon would we need those? So that's as much a part of this conversation and a recommendation for you as a citizen body, recommending to the city how we should fund and how we should proceed. How significant are these deficiencies, and how quickly should we be working on filling those needs? And then finally, I think it's important to underscore from the development community, this provides a much needed element of their project review called concurrency, which is that there will be improvements to help accommodate the transportation impacts that their projects will generate. So there's predictability for that. And so there is an advantage, even if the impact fee maybe is used in a 6 versus a 10-year period, and consequently a little bit higher, that there's certainty that that project will be built, and that they won't be held up in their ability to go forward and build.
So when you look at option 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, just because we're having a discussion, is there any way you can just quickly tell us which are the 6 years and the 10-year options in there? I know we have to go back to the slides.
I think
Yeah.
option 3 and 6 were the 10-year options, weren't they?
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yes.
And by the way, not to interrupt again, but I want to make sure that everybody understands these are just, potential options. We can adjust an option 7 or something that's some kind of middle ground in there as well.
Okay.
I just wanted to make sure that people understood that there's a variety of ways we can address the numbers in being defensible to come up with something that's right sized for the city.
How does Airway Heights' rate of development compare to Spokane's rate of development?
We're a lot faster.
So I'm assuming there's just a lot more competition there to build in Airway Heights then?
When you say competition to build, I'm not sure I understand what you're saying.
I'm just trying to understand, like Mr. White, said that a higher price will not necessarily drive development out. But I'm curious at what point that would happen. But if Airway Heights is just naturally growing faster than Spokane, more developments coming up, more people want to be out here just because our growth's more, then where is that cost? Where can we have it compared to Spokane?
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, so one of the things that the development community has complained to me ever since I've worked for the city, so 5 years now, is that our water and sewer impact fees are too high, and our park impact fees are too high. And to which I get it. On the other hand, over the last 3 years, we're the fastest growing community in the region.
Right, right.
And that's because we have other things that kind of counteract those fees, and they are, the cost of land, the need for housing, the expanding mission at Fairchild, the introduction of new commerce in the area, like down at Amazon and other industrial developments. So there is a balancing act that you have to think about as you're doing this. At the same, by the same token, if you're way higher than everybody else, that's going to count against you.
Slow down.
Yeah, if you get a reputation for just having the highest, most expensive fees in the region, that's going to work against you.
I think that we should probably handle this by first deciding whether 6 is a good number or a 10 is a good number, just for discussion. And then maybe we can look at the pricing as a secondary thing. But I think as a group, if we decide that 6 is good, then we should focus on that. And if we think 10 is good, let's focus on that pricing rather than move all over the place. That would be my suggestion.
And I think that's a great way to sort of break this down, Cal. I think I guess one question would be, is it reasonable for us to look at a 10-year time frame? And I think I would say yes, for the reasons that Heather gave and the reasons that Bill gave. I think it's reasonable to do that. I think we're probably going to have to do that, in my opinion, if we want to get a traffic impact fee that's anywhere close to adjoining agencies. I think we're going to have to do that. Otherwise, we're easily twice as much, at least.
What would be the most negative thing about a 10-year that, from your experience, that can happen in that? I mean, I know you drag it out 10 years. That's great because projects can move 10 years, but what would be the most negative reason for having that?
Well, you're accumulating money less fast. So projects that are, more immediately necessary, you're not going to have
push it out
as much. Yeah, you're going to be pushing out your tip. Yeah, that's really the one major negative.
But from a city's perspective, from staff's perspective of your experience, do you feel that the city needs a 6-year impact fee scenario, or is a 10-year doable and livable for us?
Well, I don't know, Bill, you may have a different perspective on this, but I think having the 10-year option makes sense.
Okay. Because you don't want to start giving people their money after the 6th year, right?
Yeah, you have to pay it back after 10 years.
10 years, okay.
Yeah, that's what state law says.
So anybody else have any comments before I move forward?
No, but I feel like I'm hearing from Heather, Mr. White, and Kevin that the 10-year makes the most sense.
Yeah, that's what I'm leaning to. So I don't know what Art thinks or.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with 10-year. I mean, it doesn't matter. Now, remind me, you said option 3 and 6 were the 10-year plan. Is that right?
Yes, I believe that's right.
Yes.
Okay.
So, looking at this, I would jump to 3 because I feel 3 is medium for everything. I think 6 is probably on the low side, And like you said, one is on the high side. So we all agree, I think we should focus on 3. And if anybody wants to make any changes up or down, that will probably be a good way to start, unless instead of looking at everything across the board.
No, 3 strikes my fancy.
So Cal, if I could just interject here for a minute. Bill, you were on the advisory committee that helped form Spokane's approach. And as I recall, they were dealing with a lot of these same issues. I'm trying to remember if the development match percentage that Spokane used ended up being, I want to say 40%. Was that correct?
No, they jumped from 40 to 50.
Oh, they did.
Yep.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Can we look at option number 3 that you presented on the earlier slide so we can refresh our memories on that, please?
So that
50-50, I guess, right?
yes, that has the 50% and it does have the 10-year window.
I guess based
So
on
Kevin,
the,
am I
go ahead.
understand you could lower it and do 40% instead of 50%, and that way we can lower some of those rates, like the hotel rate, and have it closer to Spokane?
I mean, that is something to consider. Again, anytime you're lowering that match, you are, like I said before, you're pushing out your ability to get the projects accomplished.
Right.
There's no, but you're right. There is no magic to 50% and 25% and 40%. It really, it's another lever that you can use to manipulate, you know, the calculation.
So if I could just add here, in my experience, typically a percentage actually can be based on past performance of success of receiving grants. So it might be helpful if Bill was able to give us an idea of how successful developing grant dollars for a project in meeting match dollars has been in the past, so that it can help us with that number. Because my recollection is that you can use past grant awards to help you dial in about where that percentage point should be from developer expenses to get to that sweet spot.
Well, and I guess the way I would answer that is by saying, number one, you're no matter what percentage you pick, you're always typically underfunded. Your need is always going to exceed the money you're going to be able to bring in. But I don't know how to actually answer that in terms of a percent match. What I will say is that the typical rationale is that you might have to apply 2 or 3 times for a certain project in the hopes of getting
Funding.
Grant match. So in other words, if we picked, we are about to submit on a grant for 6th and 12th from Garfield to Hayford. We think that we've positioned it very well for being hit on this. And actually, I'd consider this a second grant opportunity, because we did submit on getting some traffic control as a city 2 or 3 years ago for Hayford in 12th. To try to get that going for pedestrian safety and for safety from traffic cutting up for the tribe. So this could be considered our second grant opportunity here. We've politicked it and we've done a bunch of different things where I think we'll actually get there. But so in other words, if I had to pick a range, 30 to 50% is where you want to shoot for, given a 1 to 3 hit. Now, with that said, you can only submit on 1 or 2 projects at a time. So don't look at all of the projects on this list and say, well, we submit every year in all 12 of these projects. It doesn't work that way. We've got to pick the projects that work. So coming back to my original concept, we're always kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul. We need to pick the first couple of projects that have the highest need and go after them, understanding that we might have a 40 or 50% hit rate we get one, and then we move on to the next project. So you want to try to, the balance is trying to keep that number high enough where you can meet those match money demands, but low enough not to be outside the realm of being competitive. Did that kind of help a little bit, Heather? Or
I think it did, but I was actually hearkening back to, I think, the city of Spokane's recent proposal to update their impact fees, and I was asking for some clarity because I thought that when they were getting their dollars for grants, they were finding that they were only getting about 30% of the grant.
yeah,
they need
yes.
instead of the 50, and so that created a delta, a gap between what they were asking from the development community and what they were actually getting on past performance and grants. And I think that could be helpful knowledge that past grant performance can help us understand of where we should be when we ask for development share in order to make a project funding.
Yeah. And what Heather's saying is the absorption rate and how fast you collect those fees can influence. So in other words, when the city was running with the 40% match, what they were saying was they were collecting monies at a rate that really only allowed them at the end of the day to put together a 20 or 25, 30% match for those grants. So they were in theory 10 or 15% behind what they were collecting. So what they did is they raised their match to 50% in order to start getting, higher development dollars. So they had bigger matches, or they could match more opportunities by elevating that collection percentage.
So when you put the numbers together for say example, for a hotel or a house, do we look at which one we think is going to be bringing us more money versus which is going to bring us less money in the fee?
Well, again,
offset that 40% or 30% that you were talking about.
Yeah, I mean, again, I would contextualize it kind of the way Heather said earlier on how fast do we want to burn through your 6-year plan. And the less money we take in is the potential for the less expediently we're going to be able to burn through those projects on the list. So the balance is we take in a lot of money, but a development fee for, let's say, 100 lot residential development jumps from 150,000 to 300 or 350,000 as compared with the city of Spokane. That's probably the magnitude that is a deterrent for a typical developer, and so we have to balance those things. Like I said, if it's 150,000 maybe versus maybe 170,000, they're not going to flinch as much. But if those become high degrees of magnitude, that's the deterrent. So you lower your fee, but then you can burn through your tip less speedily. So there is a complete balancing act there. Catherine Miller over at the city of Spokane will always tell you, she's robbing Peter to pay Paul, just to try to keep up with the demand for projects that she has. Right now, she indicates their match money is spent for probably the next year to 2 years. They've committed their match money for a couple of years already, even after raising their impact fee. So she has to wait. She has to wait a while before she can start chasing her next opportunities.
But that's because they've been successful with their grant application. So it means that there are actually projects being built, which comes back to this idea of doing a single impact fee for the entire city, because you can use those dollars to start building the match you need for the grant application. And I think that might be something we skipped over a little bit here for the Plan Commission, is understanding that some grants require a match, some grants require a certain amount of match dollars, some do not, but you score more highly in the review process if you have match dollars. And that's essentially what the development fees are used for, is to be competitive along with the project itself, based on the type of grant being issued, that the project meets the criteria. So if it's a a multimodal bicycle pedestrian project versus it's a traffic safety project. And it's, you know, an art really to apply for these grants, but that's what these matches are for.
But in the case of option number 3, say it's 10 years, but if you look at the dates, just the tentative dates, they go from 2021 to 2026. So if it was a 10-year project, would those get pushed out or they would just stay the same?
The projects that weren't funded would just get, we prioritize the project based upon things such as capacity, safety, priorities. And the first one gets funded, the next project moves up in line. If it doesn't get funded, it gets hold over to the next grant opportunity and project. So it's almost kind of a list that, and again, you can set the pathway and you can adjust it in a year or two if it's not exactly what you want. So, you know, this decision can be modified just like projects priorities can be modified. But yeah, the idea is to have a list to work against as we move forward. And as soon as what Kevin doesn't have shown here is we've got another $15 million of projects to queue in right behind the 2026-1. So as soon as one's taken off the top, in theory, you keep the fee the same just by putting the next project on the list and keeping it going.
So you got 10 years to pretty much get this done by.
Well, you have 10 years to spend the money. You won't be able to tackle this whole project list we're looking at within 10 years.
Okay.
Yeah, you'll never get done with the list. I mean, it just continues. But as you go through the years, you adjust every year probably, because it is robbing Peter to pay Paul. I mean, that's common. So there's no magic absolute answer either.
With all of the information that we received here, I know for myself, I would feel most comfortable choosing a 10-year option. And then I don't necessarily know what the better option would be on the 50% or 20% or 25%, shall I say. But I definitely think the 10-year option is the better way for the city to go. That's just where my mind's sitting at with all the information Heather, Bill, and Kevin have given us.
So do we need to take action on this or just give you
Recommendation.
an opinion?
I think that the goal for tonight, since this is actually as a workshop, is to maybe by consensus or go through each member and identify where you feel the strongest alternative are for Kevin and for Bill. And then from there, we have a couple of options. One is based on what your feedback is, they could come back in another month with a refined version, as Bill indicated. So if you want to look at the numbers based on a 10-year, but a different proportional share of development costs, or if you feel strongly about one of these options, then that would provide an opportunity for Kevin and Bill to actually move forward and do all the necessary steps in order to bring this to hearing, which would be develop a resolution, update our traffic impact fee ordinance, and go through the process, public process that we would need to go through to bring this forward for testimony to the Plan Commission on an option.
Maybe I can start by asking everybody what they think. Myself, I think option 3 would be what I would pick. Maybe Shane has an option that he's looking forward so we can count.
I don't know which one I like the best. I'd like to see, I guess, something between 2 and 3.
So you are 2 and a 3. Eva?
I'm leaning towards 3.
So 1, 3, and Art?
3.
You got to remember though, with the lower amounts, it's going to take longer to fund these projects, and we are a high growing area compared to some of the other areas. So if we were to charge little bit more than Spokane, I don't think it would be unacceptable.
Mark?
I'm option 3 right now, but I would like to see an option with 10 years at like 40% match versus 50% match. But the option 3 with 50% match is where I'm leaning right now.
So based on us, we all think that 3 is the majority, but as recommendation from the staff, if Mark wants to see 10 years, 40%, how do we accommodate that?
If I'm the only one that's like that, Cal, and everybody else is just agreeing that option 3, I agree with option 3 will be just fine.
Okay.
I was just curious about a 40% match, but
No,
we don't have to go down that road.
We have to address everybody's needs so that it's fair. But yeah, option 3 would probably be a good starting point for us.
Well, I'd also like to know that you showed the Spokane one, but what's that based on? Is that a 50%, 20%? I mean, how many years is it? It didn't really specify on that chart.
Okay.
Yeah, Bill, do you want to talk at all about that? I think you said earlier that it's a 50%. Do you recall what the length of time was that they used for their calculation?
It's 50%, and I will have to look into what their projects are based upon their 6-year plan, like ours is. However, they have what they call a category of unfunded projects that kind of might be their up to 10-year projects that aren't in technically a part of the 6-year plan. The short answer is I have to look into it, and I will do that.
Okay. Well, it seems like there's a couple different ways we can proceed. We can, assuming the commission feels that this is an appropriate way to go, we could take option 3 as the one that has the majority buy into, and take that forward and begin to, as Heather said, get all of our ducks in a row regarding the resolution and the ordinance, and get set up for a public hearing as soon as next month. Or we could come back with some refinements and come back with some additional information related to the question that was just asked. And anything else you'd like us to do, we could do that and bring this before you again next month.
How does the commissioners feel? Anybody need more time or additional information?
I do.
I'm fine.
Not tonight.
Is everybody fine with number 3 and move forward?
Yes, I'm fine with number 3.
I'm fine
Moving
with
forward.
Kevin, we all agree that number 3 is a good option, and we should move forward with the public hearing.
Very good.
Well, thank you very much, commissioners. We'll work with Bill and Kevin to establish a timeline for preparing the materials. And it is a little tight between now and September for a hearing. And so if for some reason, because of notice and review by agencies, that it moves to October, we'll be sure and let you know. But we can send that out to you as soon as we get a better estimate of the amount of time to complete a draft.
Okay.
Anybody have any more comments before we move to the commissioners' reports? If none, then we're going to move to commissioners' report. Any commissioner have any reports or questions or concerns? Heather, is it possible that we get a summary of new developments happening in the city, or what's new activities are happening? I mean,
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot going on. So as indicated, there's the Hunters Crossing preliminary plat for 85 lots. We also have finalizing a project for a 187,000 square foot warehouse building off of McFarland Road. That will be warehouse distributing, about 267 parking spaces for that. Exotic Metals is just completing their phase 2 building, and they're looking for a certificate of occupancy. You've probably seen that construction over the winter and springtime. That was the concrete tilt up off of McFarland Road that's been moving forward. We have a brand new veterinary clinic. West Plains Animal Hospital has moved from their strip mall location over by Walmart and built a brand new facility right behind the Les Schwab's. So they'll be expanding, I believe, the care that they provide over in that location. We've had a number of projects that are looking at locating in this area. So there is potentially a expansion of a distribution facility, a substantial distribution facility building here in the area south of Highway 2, about 50,000 square feet of space. We also have some small businesses that are looking to relocate in our community. So for example, the Department of Licensing has taken over Rosa's Pizza, and they've already begun remodel of that building. So it's a great reuse of a building that's been vacant here. The Airway Heights Church was able to get their second conditional use permit. And so in addition to their facility for faith-based services, they are also have received permission to utilize their auditorium for community facilities. So they'll be providing that space for recreational activities such as wrestling, gymnastics. They'll be able to lease out that building for concerts and entertainment. And they also received permission to add a school in that facility. So those had to go through a hearings examiner process under what's called a conditional use permit for the development. And you've probably already seen work over there this week where they've been bringing a new water and sewer line to the building. So there'd be quite a bit of activity in that facility as well. Any questions about any of those projects?
No, thank you very much. It gives us a kind of a vision what's going on. Anybody else have anything? Commissioners' reports?
Yeah.
I'd like to hand. Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead, Mark.
I had talked to Zach a couple weeks back, just trying to find out what's going on in McFarland and Hayford. I think Garfield had some areas as well where the grass was just getting extremely long and people are having issues turning on those roads. I think in years past, we're taking care of that, but it doesn't seem like it's going on right now. Is there anything we can tell people about this?
Short answer is COVID. Yeah, they're just not out doing that. And I talked to Heather about this a little bit, and it's really just related to COVID. So once that settles down, whatever that means, hopefully that'll be back to normal. So
a little bit of a back, Kevin. Department of Corrections work crews were providing services of doing right-of-way maintenance, and because of COVID-19, they've scaled back, if not eliminated, their work outside of the facility. And so Commissioner Collins, Mark, was wanting to know if there was a way to do some right-of-way maintenance when those Department of Corrections crews were not allowed to be out and working.
Yeah, it's a great question, and we've been kind of struggling with it internally here at the department, and had numerous conversations with Albert about this. There are, I don't want to get into the weeds too much about this, but there are corridors where we expect homeowners to take care of their properties. And then there are locations where the city has taken it upon themselves to do right-of-way maintenance. Over the years, that has morphed into a parks and recreation function as opposed to a public works function. and that decisions on that preceded my involvement here at the city. And right now, the Parks and Recreation Department is essentially one person. Most of the department is on standby or furlough. There were a couple of full-time people and an overhire. The overhire is going away. One of our full-time people just recently quit. We have at the Public Works Department supplemented efforts of the Parks and Recreation Department in the past by using DOC crews in those areas where we've decided to take responsibility for. But as Heather indicated, they're essentially shut down. In fact, we just had conversations with them today about ways that we can still meet their requirements and the governor's guidelines, and can still get them working. We're still working to see if we can do that. I think that's going to be, we're a little bit short-staffed here at the Public Works Department recently as well. But we'll I guess what I could say is we're trying hard to work on it, and it's a difficult problem for us right now, given the COVID issues that Zach was alluding to.
No, thank you, Kevin. I just had a few people ask about it over the past couple of months, so just want to give an answer, but thank you.
Sure.
Anybody else have any comments? If not, I'll hand it over to Heather for the staff reports.
I have one comment.
Oh, sorry.
I don't know if everyone saw my email today, but this will be my last meeting.
Oh.
Yes, yeah. I'll be submitting my resignation. I was going to do it today, but I decided to wait until after the meeting. So tomorrow, I'll be submitting that.
Well, thank you for your time and services. We appreciate that.
It's been wonderful serving with all of you.
Yeah, you'll be missed.
She'll be back.
I hope so.
Well, Eva's been a huge asset to Airway Heights from her passion representing the community with Fairchild, and certainly taking on and working with myself and Albert with her passion about communication and social media, wanting to make sure that we are taking every advantage to engage our residents with what's going on, keep them informed, and taking on projects that she's very willingly wanted to do so that we could get the word out on more projects, have great ideas, and certainly was a huge contributor to our very successful Community Connect event on the comp plan in February. So you're going to be very missed, and thank you very much for your passion for the community.
You're welcome. Thank you for your kind words.
Heather, you want to jump to staff reports?
Absolutely. So we have just some updates for the Plan Commission. One of the conversations from June, boy, gosh, the summer's going so fast, was bringing forward the Industrial Sudbury Plan. There was some great dialogue with the Plan Commission members about what we could do to engage our public on the draft plan. And so I took those ideas and I put them into a proposal between now and the end of the year of how we could get some more engagement. And I'm happy to say that most of them, I think we have gotten support for. So specifically, we're going to be sending out a postcard. It's already been created, and I think it's actually in your packet, or was in your packet. I'm sharpening my skills on just how far I can make a Word document go, I think, with free images off the internet. But that's all ready to go, and it'll contain, there we go. So this will be, very much, visual connection, bringing back to our website. We're going to be putting some more materials. The plan's already been up on our website for a couple of months to lead people back there. Can you go back to the green, there we go, chart. So we'll be sending it out. It's going to include our September virtual workshop, because we do anticipate that COVID-19 and the governor's orders for limitations on gatherings will still be in effect. And so we'll be presenting information about the workshop in the background. It was used to develop and really getting more feedback on the phasing for the infrastructure, the water, sewer, and streets element. We also are going to be reaching out to the business community this month. The West Plains Chamber has graciously offered to send out the postcard and the virtual workshop information to all of the businesses that they have listed through an email to them. And we're also proposing to do another round of business stakeholder interviews as part of this process. So in the original development of the industrial Sudbury plan, there were stakeholders. This was something Mark had brought up that we should reach out and do this again, because certainly businesses have changed in this area and we may not have the same constituency that was there. So we can talk a little bit more about the plan and get some feedback. So we'll be doing that this month. And then I just want to fill in that we did get a commitment from the community colleges of Spokane. They're going to do a virtual employment and skills matchup with us. So I'm trying to dial in on a date actually that will end up being the end of September or October. So they felt that this really matched up well with their programming on how to match up skills for industries. They've done virtual matchups before with skills that are needed for future industries, and I'm very excited by this partnership with them. So I'm just waiting to complete the postcard with the actual date once I get a firm date from community college on when we can do the virtual. And they can do deep dives in this virtual meeting on specific areas or industries and the skills that are needed. So the goal is to match up this event with the postcard so that when we send it out to households and businesses, that we're going to be drawing an audience in to participate in that virtual workshop. We also would certainly do a joint workshop with the Plan Commission and City Council by October. And the proposal is to have hearings by November, December with the City Council for adoption of the Sudbury plan. So that's the proposal for our engagement plan. And it was great feedback from the Plan Commission. I hope that I was able to put the elements you were looking for in there so that we can have a broad representation from all elements of our community and get that plan out there.
That looks amazing, Heather. It looks amazing.
Awesome. That's great. Well, I will have to say that the administration is super supportive of this. They're already looking with Kevin's specifically lead to ways that we can fund elements of that utility and infrastructure plan, because that's a real key to the success of the Sudbury plan, is how we provide water, sewer, streets out there, and how quickly that can be done, because that's going to really spur future business and sector development in our community. And as we just talked about with the transportation impact fees, growth is occurring not just in residential areas and certainly population, but we're seeing a lot of new businesses coming to the area. There's available land. I think that's to our advantage over other surrounding communities that have very great locations because they're in proximity to Highway 2, to I-90. They're in close proximity to other sectors. So from an idea of being able to contribute to each other from a business arena, Airway Heights is well suited for that. So we really need to work on infrastructure to help that grow. So that was the update on the Industrial Sudbury Engagement Plan. Unless there's any other questions or suggestions, we'll move forward with that.
Good.
Great. Your next meeting is on September 9th. And so we're proposing to do a workshop on marijuana production in the C2. So a sneak peek at those materials was included in the packet. We're looking at a limited expansion of marijuana production, AKA growing, to occur in the C2 zone. And so there's a small map and some text amendments that we'll go over in more detail in September. The critical areas ordinance, as Zach went through with you, this is part 2 of getting into compliance under growth management. So the first part was the comprehensive plan. We have to update the critical areas ordinance because there were changes at the state level, as Zach indicated, for how we identify impact areas for water quality, as well as updates to wetland, basically how they classify them. It's called a rating system.
And well injections as well. Injection wells, sorry.
Absolutely. So we're going to be sending that draft out for cursory agency review, and then if all goes well, we'll proceed to the necessary notice process. And our hope is to bring this to hearing in October, actually September, for the Plan Commission, and keep our fingers crossed that will go well. So just a reminder that the third part, which we are not yet bringing to Plan Commission, but we will this fall, is we have to do a compliance and consistency review of our zoning to the new comp plan. So that'll be later on this fall that you'll start to see the draft. So that will mean an updated zoning map and some changes to our zoning code that we have to do based on the state law. We also just want to update you, the Hunters Crossing preliminary plat, due to the noticing of application and the timing of that, we actually will not be able to do the Hunters Crossing preliminary plat hearing for you until October. So that will drop off of the September agenda and move into October. And then we talked about the traffic impact fee public hearing. Based on the timing for preparing a resolution and an ordinance and doing notice to agencies, this could either be a September, or if we needed to, we may roll over to October for a hearing on that as well. And don't hate me for packing your agenda, but
No, you know, I was just feeling it's great that we're doing stuff and getting it done and moving forward. So don't apologize.
well, I appreciate that. But when you have your first hearing till 9 o'clock, you may not, you may not be so appreciative of
I'm used to school board meetings in California going till 1 or 2 in the morning. This is nothing.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. Well, I hope never to do that to you.
It's just stupid. No, it wasn't. It was just like, you won't.
I will not. I will try to meter these out, but we do have some important items coming up. And while Cal was asking, you know, what's going on, and we kind of talked about development, there are a lot of other items coming through the pipeline. So items that are going to be coming to you this fall include the downtown plan. So just a little reminder that the 19th and 20th of this month, we'll be doing the virtual studio and open house for the downtown plan. So I posted some temporary items on the website today. By tomorrow, we'll have the link to the presentation, because it's going to be a virtual presentation due to COVID-19. There's a visual preference survey that will be posted that will go all through August. I would love for the Plan Commission members to come in anytime between 10 and 3 o'clock on the 19th or 20th and participate in the studio workshop, and you'll actually get to see them working through some preferred scenarios. They'll be able to answer questions for you, and please spread the word about that going on. So that's one piece. They'll be eventually providing a proposed update to all of the commercial zoning along Highway 2 as part of this package. So we'll be working through that in the fall. Again, this isn't on your agenda yet, but this is all work in progress as we move forward, in addition to what you're seeing. And we also have a couple of other proposed code texts, zoning code text amendments that we'll be bringing forward to you. So in addition to the C2 marijuana, we're anticipating a fence regulation change that's privately proposed. And then we'll also be bringing a standard for loading docks that's directly related to that 187,000 square foot warehouse distribution building I just mentioned, where they could benefit from a slightly modified loading standard in order to accommodate warehouse distribution loading. So a lot going on, and we'll try to meter this out as we're able to for you, so we're not overloading you. But we do have some priorities, which include getting into compliance with GMA and then serving the needs of those projects so that they're getting their due process and timely review of their applications, such as the Hunters Crossing First Edition. And then with that, that concludes the staff report. Zach, would you like to add anything about what you're working on for the Planning Commission that may be coming forward, or talk about the progression of geographic information system?
Well, we are working on a GIS system. The past couple of months, I have not had a chance to work on as much as I'd like to. It's just been really busy. But I do have some dedicated time now to do that, so I'm going to be continuing to work on that. I mean, it's coming along well. At this point, it's just a lot of kind of nitty-gritty work. Once we get kind of the back end stuff with Public Works and make sure we get everything inventoried for the city, we're going to try and work on developing a public portal to make sure that GIS data will be publicly available to the citizens. That's further down the pipeline. We need to make sure we have the Public Works stuff done first. But yeah, Heather covered a lot of stuff. We got a lot of stuff going on. So we appreciate you guys being here and being active. So.
Well, Zach's being a little bit shy. He's made huge progress in getting our sewer system put into GIS. And I'm always shocked at how much work it actually requires because of how much coding is required for every attribute of a system. But we're very excited by the opportunity to be able to have publicly accessible information about where water, sewer, roadways, our zoning, and the other elements that make it easy to do business or to live in our community, because you're able to access that information.
Hey, Heather, real quick, is there any way I can ask you to send out the information about the meeting on the 19th? Just send it out via email so we have reference to it.
Absolutely. I will actually send out the postcard to you from that schedule. And then after tomorrow, when I receive, well, actually when I receive and post the link to the survey and the presentation, I'll forward that to you as well. So probably tomorrow, late afternoon, we'll be able to get that out to you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. We very much would love for you to participate in that event. I've seen the presentation materials. It's really exciting, the concepts that they're looking at for the downtown. But that's all that we have.
Let's see. You don't want me to drag it another half an hour? I'm kidding.
No,
Just a reminder that September 7th is a holiday, so if somebody's not going to make it on the Wednesday meeting, if we can know early, so because there's only going to be 4 of us now.
Would you like to move your meeting out from the 9th?
I'm okay with it, but I just want everybody to kind of make sure that we understand that, because it's a long weekend and I don't think people are going to go out, but.
Well, but the 9th's a Wednesday.
Yeah, the 7th is the holiday.
Right.
I think Carl's trying to say he may not be around Wednesday.
No, I'll be here. I'm not going anywhere.
There's a code word there, right?
I'm not going. I'm just reminding, just as a reminder. If there's no objections or any comments, then we'll adjourn the meeting at 7:43 p.m.
Excellent.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
evening.
Have a good night.
Bye.
Just closing out the planning
Good
commission.
luck, Eva.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
I think I'm out. Leave. There we go. There's Heather. Okay, bye. I think I'm the last one.
You are.
I'm trying to close it. I can't. There we are. Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.